love to learn more. It sounds like we have areas of common interest. I've seen that you're working a lot with sexuality, and that's something that I definitely have some experience and interest in as well.
That is my niche. At the same time, obviously, sex is not apart from everyday life. Eventually, I'm starting, okay, how does your day to day look like? How do you taking a break looks like? Things like that. I do a lot of stress management, like practical strategies. Maybe I am allowed to be a bit more directive, saying most therapists will be. People who come to me are coming to make a change. I think it's hard for me to explain because even if I was doing therapy, my approach will be the same because I feel like at the end of the day, the difference is you, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, my niche is long-term relationships. It's like I see things up in long-term relationships. I don't understand well dating because I didn't date to find a partner. I feel like it's different when you're dating to play around and you're just starting. I've been married 11 years. I feel like it's so different. What I understand is sharing the dishes, sharing the toilet, and then having to transition from parenting and doing all these things to sexy time.
That's hard to do. I think there must be such a need because I know I see that personally and professionally with people that are like you said, we're busy, we're adults, we've been in this relationship for a long time. The passion has fizzled, right? We're so exhausted by the end of the day that we don't even look at each other anymore, right? I think this is a really big phenomenon, the lesbian community. We call it lesbian bed death. So yeah, it's fascinating, and it sounds like such a great thing to be able to help people work on.
Sometimes the same person who has a very low sex drive in one relationship may be the one that has a higher one in the other different relationships. Sometimes we underestimate the importance of context. Oh, we had a great sex, but all of a sudden I don't want anything. I mean, what's going on in the world around you? It's not necessarily your relationship or your household, it's everything else. And so
Yeah.
that's why I stole your words from your website or honoring your identity in the midst of chaos. I added the
Right.
chaos.
Yeah, it's chaotic. It's a chaotic time to be alive. There's a lot that we're all trying to juggle. What kind of things do you find, if you were to give me just like a little bit of what you help people do, or how people kind of work on spicing things up? I'm just really curious to hear about that.
My favorite way to explain it is I help people sift through things. So sometimes we don't even know where to start. I hate when people say, well, the key to have a great relationship or to have great sex life is to communicate. But if I don't know what to say, I
Yeah.
think people start there. Like, okay, can you word vomit? We'll slow things down.
Yeah.
What's happening in your body? What pictures comes up in your mind, or what even pictures comes up for me as you're trying to explain these things to me. I love to talk about pleasure and expand it to, well, sometimes sexual pleasure is not accessible, but what brings you pleasure in other areas of your life? Just sitting down and taking a deep breath and just feeling relaxed. But then if you are having a long ass to-do list and you're not giving yourself permission to do that, you don't get to relax. You're just like, oh my God, I should be doing this and that. Your relaxing time becomes guilt time.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's just reframing that, or what are foods that you really enjoy. So I start exploring pleasure in other areas, and then, okay, so as we get into the sexual realm, what sensations feel good? What does initiation look to you? What makes you feel good? That is not performative. I'm not doing these things because I'm supposed to, but when I do it, I feel good about
Yeah.
me. You watching and enjoying is just a cherry on top, but it's not about you, right? Being able to give yourself permission to have a little bit of selfishness. For those that are a bit more adventurous, we start taking a BDSM test. Okay, where do we fall in this?
I think I took that test. I saw one online, and I took it, and I was like, this is so interesting. I didn't even know it was out there for a long time.
I love it, but at the same time, when we took it, it ended up being a little bit of a fight for us. Because some things were so opposite. Well, we can never have that because it's a bit of resentment, right? Because we live in a monogamous relationship. There's no way that's gonna happen, at least right now. And I honestly, I joke that with my kids, I'm at relationship saturation. There's no way I can handle caring for anybody else right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we take the BDSM test and we choose one fantasy and we start sifting through it. Sometimes that we go to extremes, and our fantasy is not necessarily something we want to be real, or we just don't know how, or a partner says no, but the partner is saying no to their idea of what that is. Because when you talk about this, most people go straight to leather, shinks, and webs and
Yeah.
stuff. Like, yeah, no, get a feather, get a fork, get eyes.
Right. There's a lot of different ways that that can be.
So the idea is, what do you want to feel? Or what do you want your partner to feel? And then we get creative with those things.
Yeah.
How about you? Tell me a bit more about Rainbow Family Wellness.
That we have a really great team right now. We're like the three amigos. It's myself and Malika Reeves and Brian Turin. It's nice that we have this well-rounded group of counselors. We have people that work with the littles. We have people that work with men, that work with women, that focus on queer and trans and, those kinds of things. I think it's nice that it's well-rounded.
When the sex comes up in your office?
In my office, I would say for my clients, it's a lot of times I do work with young adults who are kind of venturing into sex and sexuality, maybe for the first time. I've found there's a lot of sexual trauma with my clients, so that's a big one that can make it hard for them to know, what do I even want, like, or enjoy, because sex has been such a warped, harmful thing in past experiences. Working through those kinds of things, and then also dealing with internalized homophobia and transphobia, and that it might be a little harder for some of us to access the sexual pleasure and be in the moment and enjoy our time with partner if our family and our society have given us really hurtful messages about that.
This is a big parenthesis to that conversation. I was debating in my head. I'm awful with names. I will remember your life story. I will forget your name. Unless it's 20,000 times on Facebook, at least, because I have a picture name many times. But there's a story of a trans female who says after they transitioned and started to using estrogen, their orgasms became more whole body rather than very low body. In the book that I'm reading, saying it's hormones, but then the other day, I don't know why I started thinking about this. I'm wondering if you feel more like yourself, if you finally feel like you have found your body that you're comfortable and happy in, wouldn't that make your orgasm better rather than just the hormones? Is there anything that you have heard around these topics, something that you, as a clinician, could share?
There is something to be said for the hormonal influence, because from what I've heard, and again, it's not something that I'm super well researched in, but it seems that women and people with those feminizing hormones do tend to experience orgasm as a more almost global experience that is full body. At times, seems that men, at least from what I've heard, which is limited, it tends to be a little different. I think that's part of it, but also, like you said, the psychological component is huge. The mind and the body are so interwoven that, yeah, right. If we're in ourselves and we feel better about who we are presenting and how we're perceived by others, then that would make sense that we can also enjoy sex more.
You're in Tarpon Springs. That's an area that, my assumptions have been that it's more conservative. When I started, I was in St. Pete, but what has been your experience building a queer focused practice there?
Yeah, and you're in Newport Richie, right?
I live in Newport Richie.
Okay, gotcha. Is your office based, or are you
I'm doing virtual now.
Virtual.
So
Okay,
I'm
cool.
in-person events and stuff, but I'm focusing on building virtual so that eventually we can travel around and I'm not stuck and I'm still depending on hurricanes to work.
For sure. So yeah, right. I've been around St. Pete, Tampa, Clearwater, and things fell into place to be in Tarpon Springs, and it's a beautiful area. Right? We're downtown. It's interesting, right? I posted on a page about hosting a queer arts and craft night and got some comments that weren't so nice. You don't need to shout your sexuality from the rooftops. Just live your life and kind of calm down about it. A queer person did pop into the comments and they were like, wow, it's interesting to see you doing this, because they had lived in Tarpon for a long time and they were like, this is kind of a don't say gay town, like you might not be as well received. Thankfully, I'm I'm renting this space from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tarpon Springs. They're a very liberal, progressive faith community. They really have my back, and there's that sense of community and support that we have similar values and vision. It's kind of like, because I'm in a house too, and we use the back door, it's almost like a speakeasy. I text people, okay, so when you get here, this is what it looks like, and this is where you're gonna come in. I don't really need to be like, hey, everybody come give me a hard time, if indeed there's any of that. At the end of the day, like, we all want to be able to do our thing, right? Tarpon Springs is a very Greek town, so try to be respectful of, the fact that there's a lot of Greek people here who have their own culture, heritage, and religion, and great, right? Like, do your thing, do what feels meaningful to you. Likewise, we have our own experiences, culture, lifestyle, and things that matter to us. If we can just respect one another and coexist, then it's all Gucci.
What do you think are the benefits of going to somebody who specializes in working with queer people?
It's definitely different, right? Like, there's things that, like with any culture, whether it's culture, religion, ethnicity, like, you're gonna understand. There was a great example. I had a student intern who was shadowing sessions with me, and he was phenomenal. He was so eager to learn and open to everything. Can I say an inappropriate word, or should I censor?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Always.
Okay. I had a client who was telling me about someone talking about a trans person in a derogatory manner and saying, she looks like a clocky bitch. Do you know what that means? Right? Right. Being clocked means you're not passing. Mm-hmm. It means that you don't look feminine enough to be perceived as a woman. So it's a pretty hurtful thing to say about somebody. But it's things like that. Of course, anyone can learn these things. I don't think it should be this thing where therapists are afraid to learn the culture, because we can. But a lot of times people want someone who understands the lived experience, the concern, the fears that we have, currently around potential policy changes that are very much affecting the transgender community and non-binary, and also some fears that the gay community is facing.
How are you supporting not just your clients, but like just in general? What the hell do we do?
I think community is everything at the end of the day. We all need support, and I encourage that and try to facilitate that for my clients, because if you're isolated, we all know that's so much harder. Not everybody knows exactly where to go, especially in northern Pinellas and into Pasco County, right? St. Pete, we know there are resources. Tampa, there are resources. It's a little bit more dispersed, right? Rainbow Family Wellness is here in Tarpon Springs. Trans Network is working on doing events throughout all of Pinellas and into Pasco County. PFLAG of Safety Harbor is really all over Pinellas County. They tend to meet in Clearwater monthly. The UU Church here, they're very progressive and affirming. They even have a social justice forum focused on LGBTQ and other social justice issues. Finding out who's out there and what's out there and getting connected, being able to go to protests if that's what you like to do, but also knowing that you don't have to if that's too overwhelming for you or stressful, that you can do a lot of different things to have your voice heard.
I think that's, one of the difficulties. There's some people in the economy, finance, business area that argue, well, we're living in the best time because we have so much access to so many different things, lessons and stuff that we didn't have before. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking just day-to-day stressful living. It's also hard to juggle all the things that are shifting. It seems like there might be a recession. Some stocks are falling. There's this financial instability. Will I have a job next week? Would I have my men? There's a lot going on. What are some of your go-to favorite ways to manage? Like you said, sometimes it's just overwhelming to keep up with the news.
Mm-hmm. My clients and I often talk about staying informed, but knowing when to pull back and take a breather, because you can get into it and you can read all the updates, but it can become just too much information. Sometimes it's sensationalized and opinion-based. Sometimes it's like what might happen, right? We can get overwhelmed, just start swimming in anxiety and chaos. We might need to pull back and take a minute off of social media, away from the news, to just ground ourselves and focus on, okay, what's happening right here in my life? Doing mindfulness meditation and grounding, getting back into your body, and then figuring out, what do I want to do, right? If the county commissioners are poking at the Palm Harbor Library children's section because they think it's inappropriate for there to be LGBTQIA content in the children's section, you know what? I can take 10 minutes and write an email, and then I'm going to try to let it go and breathe and move on with life, you know? So it's really like, pick the thing, do what you can about it, carry on.
Especially in most conservative circles, we hear all sorts of things. Kids now have access to social media, so even if your parents are super supportive, you can see also the other side either way. When it comes to internalized homophobia, coming into adulthood and trying to get back in touch with your body and your erotic mind, these conflicting ideas, because most often we know it's fine. In our intellectual side knows this is okay, this is part of me, there's nothing that I should be ashamed of, but that fear, disgust side, well, but this is wrong because I have been told it's like, this is not an okay way to be. Like, how do you help clients safely cross that bridge and feel more attuned with their bodies and desires and feel comfortable with who they are?
Yeah, that's a tall
That's a
order.
loaded question. 1 or 2 years
Yeah.
later.
Yeah, right. There is, I think, a lot of fear that it boils down to, will I be recognized for who I am, especially when it comes to gender? Because right now, a lot of people can't get documents that reflect their gender. Even people that are transitioned, people who've been in this process of transition for a long time, are having trouble accessing the kind of care they need. I know someone said they called like 30 providers to get hormone replacement therapy, not even to start it, but to just maintain it. I think it goes back to being around people who get it and being in affirming spaces, being around our family, right? A lot of times LGBTQ people have referred to one another as family. Because we have together, there's a magic, there's a trust, there's a respect, and so that's why I try to show up in those spaces, because honestly it makes my heart really happy, and it's a way to connect, support, and uplift one another. I always encourage people to try to be around the people that fill your cup, right?
I love that you said, when we're together, it's magic.
It really is. It really
Be
is.
around people who you don't have to excuse yourself for being.
Exactly. Yes. You don't have to explain things. You don't have to kind of look over your shoulder or wonder how they're going to perceive it.
Yeah, that is a big thing I see in many of my clients, especially people who maybe are polyamorous. Sometimes they will say it and you can see their body language. They don't realize they're doing this, but obviously we do this for a living, we know.
Yeah.
They will tell you looking down, and then they will look up to see your reaction. Sadly, I have so many clients who come to me after therapy or on the side or whatever because they don't feel comfortable talking about this with their therapist. Or the therapist have flat out told them, no, I don't talk about these things. I don't touch that. To each their own, and not my point to talk about therapists. But I look down in shame and then I look up in fear to see, well, what's your face now?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so can your mental health provider address all of who you are, whether that's the poly component, a queer component, whatever, different cultural experiences. A lot of times I work with folks who their parents are immigrants and there's a strong family culture of certain values, beliefs, and traditions, and that's really important and impactful. So looking at all of who you are.
I want to go back to honoring your identity. So we have community. What are some other ways that you help people do that? Because I believe you also work with neurodivergent people. What does that look like?
Yeah, we get a ton of folks that are like, hey, I have ADHD, I'm on the autism spectrum. We work with a lot of different ages, so we do see kind of everybody. You said when they look up at you with that, like, is this okay? Can you handle this kind of thing? To be like, okay, yeah, I get it, I hear you. Even just when people are like, I haven't really said this out loud, I don't know if this makes sense, and you're able to say, yeah, I've heard a lot of people say this before. This makes perfect sense. You're not the only one wrestling with these kinds of things. So just having the tools, but also holding space for people, as you know.
What would you like people to take from you if there was one thing?
To have hope that things don't have to be exactly as they are. There are things that we do have to accept in life, and there are things that we can change to support and empower you to do both, to accept the things that you can't change, to change the things you can, to cope more, build up your support around you so that you have people to fall back on, but you also have coping skills and tools to help you manage things on your own when you need to.
Every time I see something that's even a little bit progressive of this area of town, I'm like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There was a Magic Mike show downtown Neurodiversity. I was like, yeah, there's
That's
hope for
funny.
this town.
Do you know if it had a good turnout?
I mean, I went there to just to drop off like a raffle box, so I didn't go in the show.
Mhm.
From what I heard, the show wasn't Magic Mike-ish. It seemed to have left a lot of people hungry. They were not very happy. That's what I've
Okay.
been told. I didn't see it.
Right, and
Yeah,
yeah.
I was there. And me seeing that was something that they were open to, and then they let me put on a raffle box. I have a box with lubes and skin safe candles and stuff, and they say, yeah, sure. I have been told some time ago, you're trying to do this might not be the best town for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the fact that there's not many people like me is that reason why.
Yes, exactly. That's where it's needed. It's an underserved community, which generally as a social worker, we're all about serving underserved communities. And a lot of times that's where the people do need it, right? People will found your website. I looked at what you had to say and it resonated. It felt right. It felt comforting. I knew that this was the place that I needed to go. If you're that like lone voice shouting into the abyss, right, it might not always be the easiest, but people are going to find you and they're going to recognize that and they're going to generally be glad that there's a resource.
Pet life in this area is pretty active. There's a lot of events nearby. Even though we're not, we may not have the flags all over, we may not be announcing it. Like, things are happening. I feel like in conservative areas, well, if we don't talk about it, nobody's doing it. Like, with parents growing up with kids, if we don't talk about sex, then we're never gonna know.
Mm-hmm.
We all have a body, we all want things.
Yeah,
We're still alive.
mm-hmm. Yes.
What's coming up for you?
This is a good time of year where we've been getting really busy, and actually we're putting on an event at the end of this month. It's going to be the Rainbow Family Block Party. It's April 27th in the afternoon. We will have the church open because there's some really beautiful paintings to see there. We'll have office open. We're going to have some community art projects, snacks, and some local LGBTQ organizations represented like Trans Network and PFLAGs. It'll be a fun little family day to come hang out and socialize and bring that community north. That's one thing that I'm really excited for. Just, continuing to plug along and keep trying to use our voices, sign the petitions, and let people know that we're here and we're not going anywhere.
Do you have any thoughts on green flags, red flags for identifying community spacers and providers that are affirming?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think what I would look for. Really, I think a lot of the green flags are also the things that some people are trying to restrict, right? Like when people put down their pronouns. It's a very simple way of saying, I recognize that people have different pronouns and that we might not want to assume that I look at you and I might assume it's she, her, but that doesn't mean that that's what you like. The little rainbow flag or trans rainbow flag, those are meant to be just kind of indicators. Hey, we see you, right? It's okay to be you. That doesn't mean that we're trying to do anything like shady, right? I think there's this belief that queer people are being really sexual all of the time, and this fear that trans people are going to groom children or some nonsense. I don't know that there's any research that there's any higher percentage of pedophilic behavior in this community compared to cis-het counterparts. From what I've heard, most of the people who abuse children identify as straight. But either way, there's this rhetoric. And I think in the questions that people ask. I went to OBGYN care with Planned Parenthood, and they asked the best question that no one had ever asked me before. They said, do you have sex with a person who produces semen? Because everybody else had said, are you sexually active? Yes. What's your method of birth control? And then we get into this awkward conversation. They didn't say, do you have sex with a man? Because you might not be having sex with someone who's a man who produces semen. They could be a trans person, they could be non-binary. So they really just got down to the precise verbiage. And I just so appreciated that, right? That's a big green flag for me when people ask, like, okay, tell me about your partner instead of, oh, what does your husband do? That kind of thing.
That's a really good one. I mean, that's a question I never need to ask, but
Mhm.
it's hard to know when to refer people to other providers. That's why I try to network with providers. I can say, go to this big office, but I don't know who's there. I don't know who's going to see you. If they're in the area, you want to DM me their name so I can tag them in the future when someone is asking for a recommendation. Like, it's so hard to find people. It's not about just whether the person I'm referring to is queer or not. It's about, okay, is this person somebody worth trusting? I feel like the more open you are to anybody, independent of what their lifestyle is, then I trust you.
Like, I have a psychiatric office that I refer a lot of folks to, and I know some of the providers there, and I've talked with the one, and I asked her, hey, I'm probably going to refer you queer folks, trans folks. Do you feel comfortable and well-versed in that? She said, it's not my specialty, I'll be honest, but I'm going to treat any person with dignity and respect. There you go, right? So yeah, I'm going to refer people to you because you're a great mental health provider and you're going to treat them with dignity and respect regardless of if you fully understand all the details. We don't need to, right? We could just say, okay, I see you, right? That's not that hard.
It's very interesting for me because the work that I do, where people might go see you, so you're still like exploring that identity and things like that. And when they see me, it's not really about that. So honestly, my lesbian couples are struggling with the same thing. My head couples, like it's the same thing. We're all difficult people. It's
Yeah,
hard to live
that's
with
one of the
people.
things.
Sex becomes like, yeah, when we were young, maybe we had sex for fun or because we were bored. Now we have to be intentional, plan for it, and know that tomorrow I don't have to wake up early and know, all these things. Make sure to pay the bills so it's not distracting me. So for me, they're all in my office when they show up. They're dealing with the same issues. But if you're a healthcare provider, it may be different because then if you're managing, I know that for some people they're struggling with, well, you're having meds. I'm not sure what happens to my license if I start doing hormones, but then I can have my clients who are in hormones and suddenly not have them. That's like complicated for them. So to me, it really depends on what kind of healthcare provider it is and what kind of support you're looking for. I'm grateful that social media is there, and that's one of the reasons I like to stay connected with people because I get to see people. Obviously, it's not a show of who you are as a person, but sometimes it is. I can see comments that you live in a group or something like, oh, ew, no,
Right. It
bye. That's
reflects a lot,
toxic.
for sure. It's like what we say and just how we respond to things reflects our values and our beliefs. Finding people who aren't going to pathologize things that don't need to be pathologized, especially, right? That's a big thing for the queer community. It wasn't that long ago that our orientation was in the DSM, right?
73, I think it was, or something.
Something crazy, yeah, right? And gender dysphoria, even there's so much debate and policy going back and forth around access to affirming care and just having someone that can not make that like a thing. Like it doesn't need to be a thing. Let's focus on your depression. Let's focus on your anxiety, your bipolar disorder, your self-harm, whatever it is. Because when trans and queer people live in affirming environments, they don't tend to experience as many of these problems, right? The problem is not the person, it's not their identity. Often it's the poor fit between the person and their environment and the stress that's creating.
Just your context.
Mm-hmm.
What would you like to formally introduce yourself and your practice?
I'm Lizzie Wolfson. I've been in the mental health field since 2016 is when I finished my master's in social work, and I opened Rainbow Family Wellness in 2021. It's grown to a group practice, and we have this beautiful office in Tarpon Springs where we see kids, adults, families in person. We do virtual, so we can cover all over Florida. I'm also licensed in Virginia, so I've started seeing folks there, which has been a great experience. We're here, we're here for the queers. We're a safe space to spill the tea. We do non-traditional therapy for non-traditional families, whether there's a queer family member, it's a same-sex couple, trans person in the family, the blended family, single-parent household, all the different kinds of non-traditional families are just welcomed and affirmed here.
What do you mean by non-traditional therapy?
Yeah, that's a good question too, right? Not that it's any kind of like woo-woo stuff. We're not going off the beaten path. We are using cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavior therapy, evidence-supported treatments. But when I say non-traditional, I mean we're not going to pathologize things that don't need to be pathologized. We're not going to look down, you like that. We are progressive. We are affirming. I think also non-traditional in that, unfortunately, a lot of what I hear in this field from both clients and professionals is just not the best, right? That there's misconduct or there's poor ethics or things like that. When I think non-traditional, I think also I'm trying to set myself above the average. I'm trying to provide excellence in care. I don't want it to be like, oh yeah, I went to Rainbow Family Wellness and it was all right. I mean, of course, there's probably going to be some people who have that take because you can't please everyone. But my hope is that people come in and they go, yeah, they really got it. They understood me. They heard me. Maybe they told me some things that were hard to hear, but that I needed to hear.
Thank you, Lizzie, so much. And if you are somebody who likes that and you want to feel more comfortable with liking all that, I do have a book club coming up. Tell me what you want. We will meet down to Barishi because I'm kind of done traveling around so far away. But
Yeah.
we do have a virtual group chat. So anybody, whether you want to come in person or not, you're welcome to join the group chat. And if you want to take the test, always so curious with, one, did your results surprise you? Do you see something new in there? But also, if you have taken it before, is it any different? Because sometimes it can change. If you're into that, you can absolutely do that. You're welcome to share. I'm super noisy. That's why I do what I do. I want to have permission to ask very private questions.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll definitely need to find out all the details on that.
Thank you for sharing this time with me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
See ya.